So here we've got something, you could call it, if you want to get all detailed, a multi-variable linear grouping game. There's two variables. There's the F group and the G group. And then it's obviously a grouping game. We've got the three different groups, and those groups are linear. We go from 1,000 to 3,000 to 5,000. Whenever you have something where one group is greater than the other, whether it be money or distance or something along those lines, it's going to have a linear component to it as well. And then we just have our two different groups. We have the F group, the KLMP, and then we have the G group, the VX, and the Z. I don't think when I'm starting a game like this, especially it's game one, the first game, I have a feeling that probably once you've gone through all the rules and everything like that, the questions probably aren't going to say something like if an F group member or if a G group member. It could, but my hunch going into this, and it turned out to be correct, was that the differentiations between the groups wasn't going to play that big of a deal once we got to the question. Rule 1 tells us that no elements in the G group can be added to this part right here because none of them are receiving $1,000. So that right there is going to be out for the G group. But what that really means is any element of the G group, the VX and the Z, they're going to be going in 3 or 5. So that's how I draw it. I just put a little cloud above the group 3 and the group 5 and might make some modifications later on depending on what the other rules are. Rule 2 is interesting. I don't necessarily know what I want to do with it at this point. It introduces this new concept of highly effective, a highly effective employee, and that essentially it's telling us that a highly effective employee must always earn more, receive a larger bonus than someone who's not highly effective. And it's only confined to the department. So a highly effective employee in the F group is not going to have any impact on a non-highly effective employee in the G group. So I'll go ahead and write that out. I'm not exactly sure at this point what I would be doing with that. So I would just do something like this. I would just do highly effective above non-highly effective, whatever that means. I'm sure it's going to work out at some point. And then I'm just going to make some sort of indication that it's restricted only to departments. That this rule has no cross-departmental element. Now this is interesting. Rule 3 tells us that only L, M, and X are highly effective. So now we're starting to get somewhere. We know that L, M, and X are highly effective. Here we actually have an opportunity to start making deductions. Looking at the G group first. But we know that VX and Z are already confined to 3 and 5. So if they're confined to 3 and 5, we only have two options for these. Then we know that X is going to be in 5 and V and Z are going to be in 3. Since X, V, and Z are accounted for now, we really are only left with 4 variables, the K, L, M, and the P. So I would just, in this scenario, I would just make some sort of indication that these are really the only variables we have now, and that we're not so concerned about the X, V, and Z at this point. We already know where they are. They're already on our main diagram. So the only thing we have to take into account now is that L and M are highly effective. And I can't necessarily think of a brilliant way to diagram these. I would just go ahead and do something like this. So what I've got like some sort of crazy squiggly circle around these to denote that K and P, they could go anywhere with respect to one another, including on top of one another or in the same group. But the line between the K and P and the L and M is just indicating that the K and P, wherever they are, they have to go before both L and M. I'm sure someone can come up with a better way to diagram this. It's not happening to me right now. All you need to know is these are our only variables. And in fact, we don't really need to worry about what we have up here now. I just don't think, I can't see how that's going to come up. The X, V, and Z is already accounted for in our diagram, and that's also accounted for the highly effective, non-highly effective for group G. And then what we have on the bottom, that's accounting for the highly effective and non-highly effective for group F. Look, we've only got 3 rules, and we all know the basic way that we do these questions. 1, we go rule by rule, we eliminate, and once we find an elimination, we usually move on to the next rule because there's usually only going to be one answer choice, one of the 5 answer choice options that are going to be eliminated per rule. Sometimes a rule won't do an elimination, and rarely we'll have one rule that will allow us for eliminating 2 different answer choices. But we have 3 here, which means 1 or more are obviously going to double up. So if you just go ahead and take a look, starting with rule 1, you're going to see that B is out. B is out, it violates rule 1. We know that simply because no one in the graphics department, no one in group G can make 1,000, and Z is making 1,000 there, earning 1,000, or I think it's talking about bonuses here. Z can't be in the 1,000 group, so that's out. E is also out because that has V making 1,000, and remember, V, X, and Z cannot be making 1,000. That's pretty basic. For the next set of answer choices, I'm going to combine rule 2 and 3. It just seems the easier way to go. I mean, off the bat, we know Z and V have to be in 3 and X has to be in 5. That's how, this is a deduction we made from rules 2 and 3. I'm going to start looking for that off the bat. Looking at answer choice A, that violates that because we have X in the 3, or 3,000. So A is going to be out because X has to be in 5. At this point, I think we haven't really dealt with the KPML. And so that's probably going to be our next elimination. And it turns out answer choice D is going to be eliminated. We should be pretty sure at this point that we have to look at the KP and the M and the L. The combination of 2 and 3 is probably going to be there. And we do in fact have that. Question 2 tells us that the L and the M aren't together. It doesn't tell us which goes before, which goes after. All we know is they're not together. And I would actually draw it out like this. Off the bat, we know if they don't go together, then there's going to be space between them, but we don't know what goes before or after. I wouldn't put this on the main diagram because it doesn't seem necessary. But what we know about these also is that they have to go after the K and the P. K and P are going to go in slot 1. The Z, V, and the X, we already know where they are. We could draw those in if we want, but we want to know what could be true. And just in terms of what could be true, only the L and the M are variable at this point, and so for a could be true question, we're generally going to be looking at things that are variable, things that aren't necessarily in one place. So I'm not going to be really looking at anything that doesn't have an L or M. The first place I'm going to go is to the answer choices with L or M. And in this case, the only answer choice that has an L or the M is B. And we know that L or M can go in 3 or 5. These are interchangeable. We have, this is obviously 1. This is the 3,000. This is the 5,000. And so we know that L and M are interchangeable. Either one can go with the 3,000. So the answer is going to be B. I would not bother to look at the other answer choices at this point because off the bat we pretty much knew that only the L or M was going to be the correct answer. It was going to be the variable listed in the correct answer choice. Question 3 is allowing us only to put 1 in the 1,000 group, the 1 group. Now, again, our only variables are the KP and the L and M. And we know that only K and B are eligible to go first because L and M have to earn more than them, which means they have to come after. So if only one of them are allowed to be in the 1,000 slot, then we're going to do something similar to what we did in the last question. We're just going to be manipulating the K and the P at this point. So it's going to be K/P, P/K afterwards. And then L and M obviously have to go together because L and M have to go after both, and the K and the P have to go sequentially because it's the case that both of them are not allowed to go in the 1 slot. And again, the Z, V, and the X are already fixed, which is why I wouldn't go ahead and draw out a new diagram or anything like that. If you need to, and you probably shouldn't, you should be able to see that these are just the 1, 3, and the 5 group. So I'll go ahead and draw it on there, but on the test day, you don't need to do this. You really shouldn't need to do that. So again, we're asking which of the following must be true. So obviously it's not going to ask us about the Z, V, and the X. What must be true? The only things that we've seen definitive at this point is that the L and the M both have to be in 5. So we're going to be looking at an answer choice that says that, either the L or the M in 5. And that's going to be answer choice A. You could go ahead and look at the other answer choices. It's just that it's going to be so quick, there's really no point. I mean, K and P are variable, so anything that says K or P have to go in the 1 or 3 is not true, because K can go in the 1 and 3, and P can go in the 1 and 3. So any answer choice that designates either of those variables in one of those two slots is going to be wrong because they could go in more than one slot. Question 4 is a must-be true question. For a game as simple as this, we should be able to do it in our head. I'm going to draw it out just so you could see what should be going on in your head, what you should be visualizing. You shouldn't have to draw out 5 different diagrams for this, but just really quick. And obviously, we're going to eliminate on things that don't necessarily have to be true. So for A, it's not the case that at least one has to be in the group 1, earning 1,000. We know, very simply, we could have the K and the P in 3 and the L and the M in 5, and we don't necessarily have to have anything in the 1 slot. For C, for C, it's not true that at most 3 employees can receive $3,000. We can have 4. Again, we're just manipulating the variables we already have. We have the K and the P there. We put the L and the M in 5. You see we could have 4 and 3. Basic stuff. For D, again, it doesn't have to be true that at least 2 employees are 5,000. In the 5,000 group, again, we're just manipulating the K and the P. K and P always before L and M. There we have X. X is the only one receiving 5,000. That leaves us with answer choice E. We should always be confident in our process of elimination skills. If you can do these fast, it's always good to prove it to yourself very, very quickly. And so for E, yes, it does have to be true that at most 3 receive $5,000. And the reason that's the case is because we know that the K and P can never go in 5 because that would leave no room for the L and M. But since we're only left with the L and M variables, and they could obviously go in 5, all they have to do is come after the K and P. Yeah, those are the only variables remaining, and of course, they could go in the 5 slot. Question 5 is allowing us to put only 2 in the $5,000 slot. So if that's the case, and remember our variables, K, P, L, and M, only L and M can go in the 5. If we're only allowed to put 1 additional one there, so we have exactly 2, then this is what we're going to end up with. We're going to end up with something like this. We're going to have the L or M in the 5 slot, and obviously the L or M in the 3 slot. Have to put the other in the 3. Because we can't put the K and P in the 3 because that would crowd out the other of the L and M. This is what we would have. And then obviously we would have the K and the P together. Again, this is how I would draw it out right next to the question. I wouldn't go ahead and make like a whole new diagram. The Z, V, and the X are already accounted for. So which of the following must be true? What must be true? Again, we're really looking only at K and P variables. This is a game 1. I don't know. Theoretically, you can get an answer choice that says M is either in 3 or 5. You can get that. That's not the impression I've gotten from this game. You know how to do that if you have to, but the first thing I'm always going to look at is something with the K and the P. And obviously, D is going to be the answer here. We have to have P in the first slot. Question 6 is a must-be false question. And for this, you should be able to sort of visualize things. You could draw stuff out if you want. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't necessarily draw a whole bunch of diagrams. I would just go through them quickly in my head, but I'll draw them out to you so you can see what's going on. So we're looking for something that has to be false, and the way to do that by process of elimination is simply to show that it could be true. So A, we could obviously show that 1 and 3 have the same number. We could just put the K and the P in 1, and we could just put the L and the M in 5. And so that's going to give us 1 and 3 have the same number. B, more received 1 than 3, more in group 1 than 3. Well, we know that can't be the case because the only ones allowed to be in 1, we already know that it's just going to be the K and the P. Nothing else is allowed to go there because L and M have to go after. So you can't have more in 1 than 3. B is going to be your answer. Just for fun, we can go over the other answer choices, proving they can be true. C, it could be true. You could have 1 and 5 in the same. Obviously, you have to do something like this. And then just the L or the M and 5. D, yeah, it's true that more could receive 1 than 5. We've sort of already had this set up multiple times. It's just a K and P are in 1. The L and M are in 3. We have 2 and 1 and 1 and 5. And then E, yeah, sure, we could have more in 3 than 5. Again, just very simple stuff. We're just playing with the L and the M again. We've got 4 and 3, and we've got only 1 and 5. That's it. It's not a bad game at all. It's something I would expect from a game 1. Shoot me a message if you have any questions.